Hi everyone, my name is Alex Shores. I'm a senior in Comm and Sergeant studying Behavior and Health in Film and Television, and I'm here to talk about my short film, Heartbeat by Heartbeat. A huge shout out to my advisor, Professor Scott Thompson, for helping me with this the last year and a half. He's been a tremendous help. So when you think about health conditions as a whole in cinema, certain movies probably come to mind, and the difficulty with a lot of these films is that research doesn't always go into the conditions they're talking about. This leads to medical inaccuracies, it leads to characters being defined by their condition and catering to certain stereotypes rather than seeing individuals as individuals with a health condition, and it also does not reflect the complexity of a health condition. And what I mean by this is that, as Sargent College teaches very well, health conditions are not just physical, they're also financial in terms of the cost of care, especially in the United States. They're social in terms of how they affect our ability to interact with others, and they're emotional because they impact your mental health, especially after getting that initial diagnosis. So the goal of this project was that I wanted to create a more authentic and representative film surrounding heart conditions specifically. And so today I'll talk a little bit about the story concept itself, pre-production of making this film, production of actually making it, and what happens after a film is made. And the reason I picked heart conditions specifically is because both my older sister Asia and my niece Misty, who's now 17 and about to go to University of Denver next year, were born with heart conditions. And as a result, they've had pacemakers pretty much their entire lives. And basically, in addition to all the physical restraints they have, there's a lot of financial, emotional, and social things that come with it. And from talking to them about this, there's not a lot of representation in the media they watch, so I really wanted to make a film that could do their story justice. So the end result was a film called Heartbeat by Heartbeat. It is a fictional narrative short film, and I went with this route because I can't make documentaries, so narrative was easier, but also fictional because I wanted it to be a story that was representative of more than just one person's story. And the logline for this film, and also it's told from the lens of a parent because I really wanted the perspective to be, the audience to be in the perspective of someone who's learning about these conditions and learning about the issues from an outsider's perspective, but also seeing the financial struggles as well. And the logline of the film is, when a single father, Grant, loses his job, he must find a way to pay for his daughter, Bryn's heart surgery while struggling through the challenges of parenthood. And so essentially the conflict here is that you have your protagonist who's focused on the financial elements and trying to be a father while kind of not thinking about how this condition impacts her in other ways as well, both socially and emotionally. And so if you've never written a script before, it looks a little bit different than a typical story because writing a book is like the final product. A script is just a blueprint you have for the entire production. So you're kind of giving the production team an idea of where you're gonna go from here. And also, as a student film, you have to consider producibility a lot more because you don't have as much money and time. And pre-production can vary on a film. A lot of student films only get a couple weeks to a month. I was fortunate to have 6 months, and I sent it to over a dozen people, including my advisor, for complete feedback. And it's about 16 pages in total, which is a little bit longer for student films. In addition to being the writer, I was also the director, and so while the producer on a film handles all the logistical elements, the director is a creative vision behind it, so they work with the entire team to ensure the vision for the film comes to fruition. So you can be involved in a lot of different aspects, but specifically casting in terms of finding your actors, rehearsing with them, finding the overall crew, working on finding locations that fit your vision, and then working on things like the inspiration board and lookbook to kind of get a visual sense to your team of what you want the overall film to look like. And although you're involved in all these processes, you're not alone. You have an entire team helping you out and collaborating to make it a very collaborative process. And another thing that's important is a script breakdown that I wanted to share. As you can see here, this is just one page of it, but it's really going through figuring out locations, figuring out characters, and the first thing you have to do when you have a script is think about all the different aspects that have to get to play and make sure that they all come out proper in the end. And people think that it's a very creative process. It's also very technical. I can get into this later if you have any questions, but this is called a shot list. So when you think about a single scene of a film, you cut from one character to the next, to a shot of both of them, to an insert shot. And so before even getting on set, you have to list out every single shot you want in all the technical aspects of everything so you can kind of speed through it and get what you need on set. So it's a very technical aspect in that regard. In terms of the actual production, we filmed in September and October. We had 5 days of filming, about 12 hours of filming per day, which is standard for a student film, but also crazy. We had about 25 students on set, which was incredible. And on set, my responsibility is mainly to the actors in terms of directing them, giving them notes after each shot to make sure that things were working out and like the best they can be. Also coordinating with the director of photography who handles the camera. In this case, it was my friend Leo. And because you can't just look at the scene, you have to look at it from the camera perspective because that's the perspective the audience will have. So making sure it looks and you're capturing what you want. And also listening to the producer because they're trying to keep you on time to make sure you stay on time. And in terms of, there's so many challenges I could get into if you have questions about that. But I was a first-time director, and so was the director of photography, so we ran into some issues with that. We also had to film all the hospital scenes in 6 hours, and that's 26 shots. For context, you may have a 10-hour day with only 15 shots, so we were really pressed for time. And also, it's 12 hours a day, so there's a lot of burnout that comes with it. And I wanted to share some stills because I can't share the actual film. The lighting maybe is not the best for this, but just to kind of get the overall feel for it. We were able to film in the actual hospital in a Brigham and Women's location. And also talk a little bit about one of my favorite scenes, the climax, to give you kind of a sense of what was going through our minds. So in this case, the story, in any case, the climax is a moment like a roller coaster where it's all building up to this moment and then everything kind of comes out, the emotion, the frustration, the feelings. And so in this case, it's a confrontation between the father and daughter as he finally has to understand her perspective and he has to kind of adapt and like listen to his daughter and understand what she's going through as the audience also learns about this aspect of having a heart condition. And we really want to capture the emotion in this, so even though it's like the climax, it's kind of in the middle of the film, it was the last scene we filmed of the entire shoot. We also kind of would let the camera run on one shot, the entire scene, to just let the actors get out the full emotion. And before this, we also sat down with them and just kind of talked about the characters, talked about their journey, and kind of helped them get into the mindset of their characters to really make this moment great. She was not directed to do so, but we kind of let them do whatever we wanted, and the daughter actually ended up crying on the camera, which is a very emotional moment for all of us. Yeah. And to quickly sum up a bit of post-production, editing, a lot of feature films get like 2 years to do it. We had like a month and a half. It's a very quick turnaround time. Also took a week to mail the hard drive to the editor in California and then to send versions back and forth. So there were a lot of different cuts that went along with this, and we sent it to like dozens of people just for feedback to make sure the story is coming through, because things don't always look expected from script to set to editing room. A script is words on a paper, and then on set you run into issues, and then editing room things may be redundant, or you may even cut out scenes entirely because they just don't feel important. And after this, we had a premiere on December 1st with about 50 people in attendance here at BU, which was really awesome to show the film for the first time. And then we sent it to about 40 festivals with the crowdfunding money we had globally. It's been an official selection at one, and it's won finalists and for writing and acting as well. So that's been a huge honor. And just want to end this by saying thank you so much to the incredible team, the cast, the crew, my incredible advisor, and also my niece, who all help with the story and help with start to finish. We have our production designer, Laura, in the audience as well. None of this would be possible without them. And I don't know if the QR code works. I'm hoping it does. But if it doesn't, you can ask me. But you can see the film online now. It's not advertised, but it's privately linked. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Now we'll be taking some questions.
So I think this was like a really, really cool project, and seeing the amount of work that you put in is just absolutely amazing. So you should be really proud of yourself. I'm curious, since you mentioned that this is your first time directing, and there's also so many aspects of this where you were able to handle such a ambitious amount of work in a short amount of time with various constraints being a college senior. So what kind of experiences did you have leading up to the Keystone that you think informed your ability to be able to take on such an ambitious project and do it successfully?
Thank you for that question. That's a very good question. I've taken some classes in directing and writing, so I've had a little bit of experience like in the learning aspect, but 100% was very overwhelmed on set. Was not ready for a lot of the challenges that came with it, but I think I've been fortunate to have a lot of leadership roles at BU, and I think directing at the heart of it is just being able to lead a team, being able to take deep breaths in the moment and like make the best decisions. So I think I also did a lot of research in terms of the heart conditions because I really wanted to make the story medically accurate. I also just kind of watched a lot of videos on directing, watched a lot of movies that kind of gave me inspiration, and also the rehearsals were a big thing. A lot of people don't have time to rehearse with their actors. We had like 4 or 5 rehearsals where we just kind of like ran through the scene again and again to really nail it down. So I think that pre-production time really helped me to see what worked and what wasn't going to work.
Hi, you did amazing. I was just looking at the film online right now, and it looks so professional. I'm very impressed. I was wondering, what was your favorite part of doing all of this, like from start to finish, or what was your biggest learning outcome?
Those are really good questions. The biggest learning outcome, like in hindsight, hindsight's always 20/20, right? I think I was looking back on all the shots, and sometimes you're not always happy with the shot, and I think it taught me a lot about, especially working with the camera, because I didn't have to work with it, but you have to know what you want, what kind of shots you want, what kind of like image you want. So it taught me a lot about, I need to really gain more experience there and kind of know what I want the visuals to look like, because my director of photography, Leo, he's incredible, he's phenomenal, but like I wish I understood a little bit more to help with that. I will say, I think honestly being on set's the most fun part. Like we had like, we had a pajama day one day, we had like a dress and suits day, we kind of had a little fun with it, but filming that climatic scene, just like really seeing the characters get into it. The person who plays the father, Steven, he actually, both of his kids had open heart surgery, so this story is very close to him, and they're both doing very well now, but that's why it really touched him, so hearing how many people like related to this story really made me really happy. Thank you.
Terrific, Alex. Really impressive presentation. Could you say a little bit more about the crowdfunding? I'm curious, did you know going into it that you would need it? How sort of time frame numbers? And then do you have any idea who the people are that provided the funding in the crowd sense? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So a lot of it comes from friends, family, different networks of people. There's a bunch of different platforms online. We use something called Indiegogo, which is very popular for student films. We were able to raise we raised $1,500, which is including the 2,000 from Kilachand, which really helped a lot. That covered most of the costs. I will say the location, like getting a hospital, was pretty expensive, so we're very grateful for the funding we got. You can add incentives on there. We had like little incentives, thank you notes and whatnot, so you can kind of incentivize people to donate, but it is really limiting when you kind of just send it out to people, tell them to send it out. So crew and cast donated as well, so it was a lot of just word of mouth.
This was so great. This was so fun to watch and so cool to get to hear about. What kind of feedback, if any, did you hear from people who had heart conditions and who maybe saw the film finals?
Yeah, thank you. So even like from the initial drafts of the script, it was so interesting because, in terms of specific feedback, but like certain people on crew had like relatives with heart conditions or relatives who were nurses, so hearing kind of about the health insurance aspect was very difficult because I don't know much about health insurance. I took a class on it, did not gain the most out of it. But I think, especially when it came to the financial aspects, I was a little unfamiliar in terms of, when you lose a job, how health insurance works in that kind of situation. So I think from the financial aspects was the part that I struggled with the most. In terms of representation, really just trying to tell so many stories in one person is very difficult and challenging. Also in terms of certain symptoms, having a pacemaker kind of comes with the hardest story, but then we actually changed last minute to the characters getting a pacemaker but doesn't have it yet. So kind of, in terms of like, there's one scene when, when the rhythm of the heart kind of shifts or is too slow, then you may faint. Making sure that moments like that didn't feel dramatized was a big thing because films often dramatize those a lot. So one of the things people would give me advice on make sure it's more realistic and not overdone. Thank you.
This is so cool, thank you. One question I have is if you have anything to say about the emotional closeness of this project to you, since you have close family members who deal with these conditions, and if there's just anything you want to say about your personal connection to the subject matter.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Obviously the story is very close to me because seeing my sister and my niece grow up with this their entire lives has influenced why I wanted to make this film in the first place and why I think it's so important to make it. I think a lot of films just get made because people have an idea, which is totally valid, but I really wanted to tell a story that actually have an impact and that when people saw it, they could either relate to it or see the issue with it. And so I think the biggest thing I've kind of learned from that is that heart conditions just aren't talked about enough, especially in the medical field. There's a lot of research, but research doesn't always result in people understanding it properly, whether it's a physician or a parent. And so I really think that there should be more conversations surrounding heart conditions because there really isn't a lot right now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start getting ready for the next speaker.
Thank you all.